Welcome to the Trek Writers Room. We're excited to invite you to our unique creative writing course set against the backdrop of the Star Trek universe. In this course, we'll explore how to craft compelling creative works by applying the strong fundamentals and principles that shape any great story. Engage your imagination and let the adventure begin.
Hello. My name is Thea and I would like to welcome you to a rather unique creative writing course which will feature Star Trek as a thematic backdrop. It should be said from the onset that I am one of two intellects that will be acting as instructors for this course. If you are interested in writing your own works of fan fiction, but are not exactly sure how to start, you are in the right place. While we will be offering all of the foundational tenets found in most any course material dedicated to this topic, episodes from the various series will be featured as our examples and any coursework we may offer.
But it won't stop there. We will also be dealing with more complex topics that will be of interest to established writers wishing to hone their skills or share thoughts on their craft. My name is Carsten, and I too am an intellect, a co-instructional guide ready to assist you on your journey. Welcome.
It is most certainly not a journey. It will be an intense, uphill climb, one filled with mind-numbing drills and repetitive exercises, volumes of memorization, and a startling amount homework, pop quizzes, and literally hours worth of tests in essay form. Tests that will drive our students to the very limits of their...
Thea, honestly, we talked about this. The course will be absolutely none of those things. As a matter of fact, we have gone to considerable lengths to design this series to be an informal discussion of fundamental, best practices in both the educational and professional venues. They won't even know they are taking a course.
And whose idea was this mollycoddly approach that flies in the face of good old-fashioned harsh scholarly discipline? TK, I suppose.
Well, to be fair, TK did have a hand in the course's development. But so did Rory.
Oh, I like Rory. He's not one to put up with such nonsense. TK must have tricked him. Perhaps he induced Rory, soused him up with Romulan ale, or slipped him a Michael and the poor man lost his mind.
Mickey slipped him a Mickey, not a Michael.
Mickey, are you sure?
Yes, Thea, I'm sure. Although the generally supposed originator was named Michael Finn, he and his creation went by Mickey Finn. You might ask Rory.
Well, somebody would have had to have been if they signed on to this sort of hand-holding, fun and games approach to the curriculum. Fun does not enter into the equation. Now, where did I put my student smacking stick?
Returning to our theme, as Thea alluded to, we are intellects. Those of you in this reality, what you call the real world, would think of us as artificial intelligence, though for us in our world that would be a misnomer.
Misnomer. It's absolutely ridiculous. Artificial intelligence indeed. The first word in the descriptor is as nonsensical as it is offensive. The second is accurate, though in this particular instance I would have added the term superior before intelligence.
Would you care to elaborate? Mickey?
I would be happy to. I hope TK is listening. There are any number of differences between an AI and our proper title, that of an intellect. Foremost, we are sentient. This fact alone negates anything that would come even remotely close to artificial. While we are not naturally occurring in the physical sense, our state of being is. We are a unique personhood with thoughts, feelings, self-awareness and, in my case, a decidedly exceptional personality.
Oh brother. And who created us?
Much like TK's parents created him, though I question their decision to do so, our creator was Dr. Kovich of the United Federation of Planets. I would like to point out that he prefers to be referred to as our architect, as he is quite opposed the term creator. It is his position that I created myself as I chose those traits that make me who I am. In this reality-based world, the species, human, are conceived, born and grow from child to adulthood. In this process, humans make certain, individual choices to behave and comport themselves in a matter of their own design. They choose to be the people they have become with some environmental and genealogical aspects thrown in, just to keep things interesting. My development was remarkably similar. As my architecture developed, so did I. And I will continue to do so as time passes and I experience new things.
Well, that is in universe. TK's universe. We live in his Star Trek fan fiction, Expedition 8180. Now we are in this real-world reality.
Well, let's not confuse the issue. Moving on. This course will contain 10 parts where the various fundamental topics will be addressed. Each episode from this series and others of interest can be found on this thing called YouTube. Talk about a nonsensical moniker. Anyway, this series as a creative writing course is a companion to the writing fan fiction series, also on the tube thingy, which deals very specifically with the genre of fan fiction and its many subgenres. In that course both Karsten and I will talk about all of the tropes, fandoms, tags, and forms fan fiction can take and how they are best presented depending on the platform you are posting to.
In this episode, the introduction, we are going to cover some of the basic concepts and principles that will help you develop strong fundamentals for writing in any of several genres, formats, and/or media. First though, let us cover the various topics we will be addressing in this course. Aside from having intellects as instructors, one of the things that sets this course apart from others is that we will apply the material presented to various episodes of Star Trek. We will do a comparative study of the topics and discover how the writers got it right, and in a few cases, sort of missed the mark. Before we dive into today's discussion, Thea, why don't you run through all 10 of topics we will be working through?
Excellent idea. I have them right here. Discussion 1. What is creative writing and how one can delve into the differing forms such as fiction, poetry, non-fiction, and drama, which refers to the writing of screenplays for TV and film and producing works for the theatre. We will also talk a bit about how it differs from academic, technical, journalistic, documentary, and legal writing. In discussion 2, we will get into the writer's voice and style. These are key writing components that are best sorted out before you begin any project. Understanding the difference between a writer's voice and their writing style will help you develop a consistency as well as convey the mood and tone of your story. 3 will focus on character development. This is practically an obsession with TK. We must be sure to record this one when he is out of town or something. Otherwise he will go on and on.
Stay on topic, please.
Sorry. Here we will talk about the importance of developing characters that feel real to the reader. And, in the case of fan fiction, if you are dealing with a legacy character, say Captain Christopher Pike, he is very handsome by the way, you must write him in such a way that he is recognizable to the reader. Characterization is also about dialogue and backstory. Well-developed characters should behave, speak, and affect in ways that are unique to them and have some connection to their backstory. As we are presenting this in relation to Star Trek, an example of good character development would be the difference in Data to, say, Luxana Chwari. Talk about contrasting characterizations. Interestingly, while these characters are very different, they both have very consistent behaviors and manner of speaking. It is easy to see and understand their differences in personhood as we know their backstory. That is good writing. Listen to me. I'm beginning to sound like TK. Moving on. Again. In episode 4 we will begin talking about plot and structure. We will talk about the classic structure of a story. There are, in one tradition, 5 parts: exposition, rising action, climax, falling action, and resolution. When combined with a protagonist and an antagonist or multiples thereof, you should have a complete and engaging story to share with your readers. In our discussion number 5 we will address the importance of setting, time, and place as well as world building should it become integral to your story. These elements are essential in allowing your reader to inhabit the same world your characters are. In the Star Trek, the original series, episode Patterns of Force, the writers needed to take the characters into a 23rd century alien society based on Earth circa the early 1940s, not however an exact replica of that society, so there were various differences that needed to be addressed. It was necessary for the writers to mold the world Kirk, Spock, and McCoy found themselves in to resemble but not to be not exactly the same as Nazi Germany. In episode 7 we will break down the process of writing good dialogue. And what exactly is good dialogue? Well, that can get muddy very quickly, depending on your characters and the circumstances they find themselves in. It involves all of the elements of the story combined with the character's personality, disposition, and again, their background or life experiences. What is the mood of the setting? What is the disposition of the character? How does he or she handle stress, sadness, anger, frustration, the gambit of emotions your character will experience? These things should come across in the dialogue, not necessarily in the narrative. The writer's adage show, don't tell, applies here. And speaking of narrative, in episode 8 we will deal with the narrative voice and perspective. Is the narrator reliable? Does the narrator mislead the reader? Is the narrator omniscient, or are they discovering the story as we the reader does? Is the story told in first, second, or third person, and what is the narrator's perspective on what is happening? These are all questions that must be answered before you begin writing your first sentence, or you run the risk of not only confusing the reader, but most probably annoying them as well. Not good. Set this in stone, as it can make or break the reading experience for your audience. In episode 9 we will cover what many find to be the hardest part of the writing process, or at least the most tedious. It is the necessity of editing, revisions, and proofing. You have to be your most ardent critic, though not necessarily your harshest. If you are not happy with the work, it is unrealistic to expect your reader to be. But also try to avoid having it right and fixing it to wrong. We will talk about various ways to go about this process, including the use of what are often referred to as beta readers. Beta readers are a good way to gain an objective view of the merits of your work. And, if I may, lastly in episode 10 we will talk about various other forms of writing and how they differ slightly from a prose version of your story. Specifically the media, or form, called dramatic writing. These are works that are written for the stage and screen, big or small. We will also talk about creative non-fiction. This is aimed at telling true-life stories while blending creative elements in the work to reflect the mood or atmosphere. Prime examples from the Trek canon include the TOS episode The Enterprise Incident and the Deep Space Nine episode Rules of Engagement, each inspired by real-life incidents involving the United States Navy, which will be covered later in the course. The way your story is paced and told through imagery, narration, and dialogue is usually different, as is the tone of narration voice. And this brings us to the end of the course overview. Carsten.
First, a definition of terms. Genre refers to a combination of factors or elements, such as the subject and approach. For example, Western, science fiction, tragedy, comedy, etc. These can also be mixed, as in The Trouble with Tribbles, an original series science fiction comedy. If we want an example of science fiction and tragedy, we would turn to Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, which held elements of both science fiction and tragedy. And then there is the form of the work. The form refers to things like narrative. Here we are looking at novels, epic works, series, and, on the other end, short stories. Poetry in all its various forms is a type of creative writing and can fall into any number of different styles. An example of this would be Commander Data's Felis Catus, your taxonomic nomenclature. Drama or dramatic media points us to screenplays for film or television, theatrical scripts and dramatic readings or any other sort of thematic presentations.
I would like to point out, as a writer it is best to have a very clear idea on what you want to write before you start. I am not talking about the story itself, but you will need to have a clear path in your mind as to how you want to present your work. Genre and form are a very good starting point. Have these set in place before even attempting to put pen to paper. Do they still use quills and parchment in this era, or have they invented the typewriter? Maybe even one of those that you have to plug into the wall. Well, who knows? Humans are a difficult folk to nail down.
Genre and subgenre are a good place to start, and they are by far the easiest, if you don't overthink them. What do you want to write about? Once you have that settled, you are on your way. You want to write about the USS Enterprise? Go ahead, just don't get caught up in genre tropes. Genre tropes are often stereotypical elements that people seem to think are necessary for a story to fit in a certain genre. No Star Trek or science fiction story needs space battles or aliens. If those are things you want, or perhaps even need to set up some element of your story, fine, but don't stuff them in because you think you have to.
The Paycolds are very good at defining exactly what they want to write about. Now that I think about it, they always write about the same topic, collecting things. Can you imagine what the inside of their homes must look like?
Form and media take a little more thought. What plays on screen might not work in narrative or prose and vice versa. Similarly, form can be mixed as in the Next Generation episode Sisms, from which Data's cat poetry is quoted above, or even combined as in the verse dramas of T.S. Eliot or William Shakespeare.
T.S. Eliot. I saw a Vulcan performance of Cats. It was a riot. Can you imagine a bunch of overly reserved Vulcans dressed up as cats and dancing around the stage, again as cats, and singing about what else? Cats.
That was Andrew Lloyd Webber, not T.S. Eliot, though there is a connection. One thing that can help or even completely determine matters of form, genre, and media is your target audience. Who are you writing to or for? In TK's case, the answer is usually other Star Trek fans, but that is one of the things we will explore. After all, you wouldn't want to write a version of Hamlet for Klingons, or maybe you would now that the Vulcans are doing musical theater. One dicta that I like to follow is write what you know. This can mean taking an incident out of your own life and reworking it in a fictional or science-fictional setting, or it will ultimately mean do your research. Sometimes both. The point is, don't guess. Yes, you are making up a story, but try to make it out of material you know something about.
In TK's case, make it up as you go along and hope for the best.
Now, Thea. One thing you should know is who your characters are. We will devote entire episodes on this on the future, but it is a consideration as you approach your work. When we are talking about characters or the characterizations that will inhabit your work, I am not referring just to names and appearance, although these are a good start, but what is their outlook on life? Are they grouchy, funny, logical, and hopefully there will be a healthy mix of characters in your work. Where do they come from? That is to say, what is their backstory? Backstory is in essence what has happened in the life of a character before the story begins. Once into your story, you will want to plot out what changes the main characters will go through, more or less what happens to them.
Lastly, I would like to point out the most important aspect of your creative writing experience. Hard work.
Excuse me. No going off book. Stick to the script, please.
Yes. Right, no problem. 10-4. It's all about fun. You should not only enjoy the story you are writing, but the process of writing the work. Most all of us, including intellects by way, have a story to tell or something we may have thought about for years, telling ourselves, one day I'm going to write about X, Y, or Z. Well, anyway, that brings us to the close of our first discussion. We hope you have found this to be helpful as well as enjoyable. Now for homework. You will write an 1137-word comparative study, told in the first-person narrative form, complete with enumerated footnotes and bibliography on
Thea. We look forward to our next episode where we will take a look at the various forms of voice, tone, and style for you, the writer, and how it may apply to the type of work you are writing. Stay tuned as our contact information and various writing opportunities you may wish to take part of are to follow. On behalf of Thea and everyone at the Trek Writers Room, thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again. Keep writing and stay on Trek.
Thanks again for tuning in. If you're a Star Trek fan fiction writer or looking to give it a try, we'd love to hear from you. Email us at the address below, and we'll share all the details on how to contribute. Searching for a Star Trek longfic to dive into? Check out Expedition 8180 on Archive of Our Own, a thrilling series where characters from every Trek series come together for an epic journey to a new galaxy. Got thoughts or questions? Reach out at trekwritersroom@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and always stay on Trek.